In a world full of doubt, confusion, and identity crises, it raises the need to know how the world was when all that we see started. It is by going back to the beginning that we can only be able to understand the real origin of what we see and who we are. Genesis 1 is more than just ancient poetry or a theological account. It's an outline for life itself. In this video, we look at the deeper meaning of the account in Genesis 1. We'll look at how light existed before the sun or moon, how the world remained green without the rain, as well as other creation accounts with deeper meanings. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1 verse 1. Before there was time, before light or space or matter existed, God was. He didn't emerge from anything. Everything emerged from him. This single verse opens with a thunderous declaration. God is eternal, self-existent, and sovereign. The Bible doesn't start by arguing that God is real. It starts by telling you he's already there. That's because belief in God is foundational. It sets the tone for everything else. The Hebrew word used for created is bara, meaning creation out of nothing. This tells us God didn't use pre-existing materials. The universe wasn't formed from leftover cosmic dust. It was spoken into existence by a God who needs nothing and lacks nothing. He is entirely distinct from creation. He doesn't dwell in nature or depend on it. He sustains it. Everything begins with him. The creation story opens not in calm, but in chaos, a world covered by darkness, formless and empty. Yet, even in the void, God was not distant. His spirit was there, actively present, hovering over the waters like a watchful force meant for transformation. The earth was covered by darkness. This darkness is more than just the absence of light. It's often seen as a symbol of spiritual resistance. Some theologians suggest that this resistance came from Satan, who had been cast down to the earth, Isaiah 14 verse 12, opposing God's plan from the very beginning. But even the strongest resistance could not withstand what was coming. Then, the Spirit of God moves. Before God speaks, before form and beauty arise, his Spirit stirred. This divine movement marks the beginning of transformation. The first day of creation, light breaks forth. The very first words spoken by God in Genesis are filled with power and purpose. Let there be light. And in that instant, light burst into being. Not sunlight, but light itself, the essential force behind vision, energy, and life. Remarkably, Genesis reveals that light, day, and night all existed before the sun and moon were even created on the fourth day. This tells us something profound. Light is not merely physical. It has a supernatural dimension. In fact, the Bible later shows us that in the new heavens and new earth, there will be no need for the sun or moon. God himself will be the light. Revelation 22 verse 5. Light, therefore, is more than what we see with our eyes. It's a powerful spiritual symbol. Wherever there is confusion or darkness, God speaks light, and with it comes clarity, order, and hope. On the second day, God performed a breathtaking act of design. He made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. Many biblical commentators and even some scientists interpret this to suggest that the Bible acknowledges the presence of a vast canopy of water vapor in the upper atmosphere. This vapor blanket would have profoundly shaped the planet's early environment. Imagine a world wrapped in a global greenhouse where the climate remained consistently mild and pleasant. There would be no violent winds, no storms, and no rainfall in the form we know today. Instead, tropical-like vegetation would thrive across the earth, not by rain, but by a rich system of evaporation, condensation, and heavy morning dew or mist, a gentle, life-sustaining moisture drawn from the ground up. Through this act, God wasn't just separating water. He was establishing the framework for a perfectly balanced, flourishing world. On the third day of creation, the waters beneath the heavens were gathered into one place, and dry land emerged. Then, the earth burst into life, producing plants and vegetation of every kind, all before the sun was ever created. This detail is crucial. It shows that the plants didn't rely on the sun for nourishment, but on the light that God had already spoken into existence on the first day, Genesis 1 verse 3. This divine light sustained creation, even before the appearance of the sun and moon. This presents a major challenge for those who interpret the days of creation as symbolic of long, evolutionary ages. How could plant life survive and flourish without the sun for millions of years? On the fourth day of creation, God unveiled the celestial clock of the universe. He spoke, and the sun, moon, and stars came into being, set in the vast expanse of the heavens to separate day from night and to mark seasons, days, and years. Since that moment, humanity has looked to these heavenly lights, not just for warmth and beauty, but for direction and measurement, tracking time, navigation, and even signs from heaven. But beyond their brilliance lies a breathtaking precision. God placed the sun at exactly the right distance from the earth, no more, no less. Shift it just a few million miles closer or farther, and life would unravel. This wasn't random. It was intentional, intelligent design, an unmistakable sign of a creator who crafts not just with power, but with purpose. On the fifth day, the silence of sea and sky was broken as life burst forth at God's command. He spoke, and the waters were filled with sea creatures. The skies came alive with the flight of birds soaring across the heavens. The birds of the air weren't products of chance or evolution, but of God's creation. No animal evolves from plants, and all life didn't sprout from a single, primitive cell. Instead, it all came from the mind and hand of the same brilliant designer. On the sixth day of creation, God made the beasts of the earth according to their kind. When we look at the infinite variety of the animal kingdom, both living and extinct, we must be impressed with God's creative power, as well as his sense of humor. Anyone who looks at the giraffe, the platypus, and the peacock would testify that God is joyful and humorous. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." The repeated use of the plural, "let us in our image according to our likeness," is consistent with the idea that there is one God in three persons, what we know as the Trinity. An understanding of who man begins with knowing we are made in the image of God. Man is different from every other order of created being because he has a created consistency with God. This means there is an unbridgeable gap between human life and animal life. Though we are biologically similar to certain animals, we are distinct in our moral, intellectual, and spiritual capabilities. This means there is also an unbridgeable gap between human life and angelic life. Nowhere are we told the angels are made in the image of God. God created man fully formed and made him in one day, not gradually over millions of years of progressive evolution. The idea that a slow, progressive evolution could produce a complex mechanism like the human body just doesn't hold up. God's final analysis of his work of creation is that it was very good. God was pleased with his creation, and so should we. Every time you look at yourself, always remember that you are God's perfect creation.